Thanks very much for inviting me to speak about our experience in the campaign here to save our Sperrins. So this picture is just to give an idea of the area we live in. The Sperrins are a mountain range and they run across counties Tyrone and Derry, and the whole area is designated as an area of outstanding natural beauty. So it's only to give you a little glimpse of it, and I'm sure you all agree that it is indeed beautiful. Okay, so some background. Canadian exploration company came here. Now, I'm not sure if it was at the end of 2009 or the beginning of 2010, but we weren't aware of them for really probably about 4 years that they were even in the area. And they set themselves up and called themselves Dalradian Gold. The name sounded okay. And they set about then getting prospecting licenses for all metals. They got the prospecting licenses, 6 of them from the Department for the Economy. And then they got option lease agreements to look for gold and silver. And they got that from the Crown Estate because the Crown Estate owned the rights to the precious metals in the north of Ireland. And they got the prospecting licenses and the option lease agreements over 300,000 acres in counties Tyrone and Derry. And the chief executive of Dalradian, I remember reading in the Sunday Business Post in July 2015, he said, I'm not talking about a single mine, but a mine camp. Okay, so then over the years, Dalradian set about trying to buy the social license. And that's where, they ingratiate themselves with people and community leaders and politicians. And in 2014, they set up the Dalradian Community Fund. And that's where they give out money. It could be sponsorship, or it could be gifts like computers, laptops, iPads and that to schools, minibus to charity, things like that. So individuals and groups can apply twice each year, June and January, to get money or sponsorship from Dalradian. And they just have to sign that they will allow themselves to be used in publicity purposes, and they will not say or do anything against Dalradian. And so that's an ongoing, let's say, problem. And Save Our Sperrins, our group, we formed in 2015, June 2015. So January 2016, we read in the local press that Dalradian had got a site beside Greencastle village. And this was the first time they mentioned, well, we knew they were looking for gold, but they mentioned they were going to have a cyanide processing plant. And that struck fear into the heart of the community. Then there was nothing more really until November 2016, when they had what they called a public consultation event. And we went along, and this was their compound, and they actually didn't have any information for the people. They had no plans, they had no feasibility study, they had no business case. All they wanted to do was to ask people, were they in favour or against a gold mine, and what were the reasons for being against it. So it was a strange public consultation. So we were wondering, how did a Canadian company know to come to the Sperrins? And so we were trying to find out, because we live in a very remote area and probably a lot of people don't know where the Sperrins are. So anyhow, we found out that there's a big conference every year, mining conference in Toronto in March every year, and it's called PDAC, Prospectors and Developers Association of Canada. And they invite, well, people, investors, shareholders, mining companies, all come along to it, 20 to 25,000 people. And so we sent 2 young people out in March 2018 to find out what was going on. And they found out that Ireland had a stand, and it said Ireland open for business. And there was a minister called Sean CAIM, K-Y-N-E, and he was doing a keynote talk, and they were able to see that Dalradian were doing 2 talks. And there was a lot of people, north and south, government officials who were there. And Ireland was being promoted as a whole country. And I would be very much in favour of it being the whole country. But there was no border in any of the maps. And they were telling companies where to prospect, for all the minerals and of metals of the day. And they also found out that there's a Fraser Institute in Toronto, which ranks countries in terms of their attractiveness to mining companies. They rank countries. And Ireland has been consistently in the top 5 countries for being attractive to mining. And you probably can't see the backdrop in this, but they had, you know, about the favourable policy with strong government commitment. And so now they mentioned the Minerals Development Act, which is currently being actually talked about, streamlined permitting procedures, pragmatic environmental requirements, flexible royalties regime, security of tenure, and found out that there's great tax concessions, and in fact, a lot of expenditure is reimbursed to the company. So we found out a lot then. That's how they were invited in, governments north and south working together. So then in November 2017, Dalradian submitted their planning application. That was the top left picture. And there was 10,000 pages, and it was the largest planning application in the history of Ireland, north or south. Then in the autumn of 2019, they submitted a first addendum that had 15,000 pages. And in the winter of 2020, they submitted a second addendum of 20,000 pages. So they kept us reading for a very long while. As I said, I don't know if I said, Save Our Sperrins was set up in June 2015. So we started educating ourselves about gold mining, what was involved and what was the impact of it. And then we produced leaflets then, information leaflets, and then we started to go around counties Tyrone and Derry and doing public meetings to tell people about this project. So we also were networking then with people nationally and internationally. I think maybe some people on the Zoom who'll see themselves. So top left, you know, people from Cavan and Monaghan, and to the right from Connemara, down below them. That was in Dublin at the Latin America Solidarity Centre. We met people from a lot of South American countries. The bottom left, right is Donegal, and then there was a Zoom during COVID. We learned how to do Zooms, although we're still learning, and they were people from Europe, but we have done Zooms with people in South America, North America, the Philippines, etc. And then that, see left, second down, that's a group in Peru, and they have been fighting mining for more years than us, and they have sent us solidarity, and we have sent them solidarity. Now, some people might wonder, why are we opposed to gold mining? And it's because of the environmental impacts and the health impacts. So we'll take them separately. The ecological impacts, well, it's really to do with pollution of water, air, and land. And that, having these in the right order, but okay, Dalradian are talking about a mine 900 meters deep in the earth. So they'll have to use explosives in order to get the rock out that contains the gold veins. And the explosives in themselves will produce ammonium nitrate. Then whenever they get out thousands of tons of rock, they crush it to this consistency of flour. And then this is either soaked in a solution of cyanide, and if they're allowed to do that, or some sort of chemicals. And that in itself, whenever they took out the rock from the ground, because it contains pyrite and is exposed to the air and to rain falling on it, it produces sulfuric acid, which is another name for acid mine drainage. And when acid mine drainage starts, it can't be stopped. It also then runs over the other crushed rock, and it releases heavy metals like mercury, arsenic, lead, cadmium, chromium, copper, etc., a whole host of heavy metals. So they're all going to be available in the ground and blown about in the air because they'll be in the fine flour that the rock is crushed to. The whole northwest of Ireland is known to be high in radon gas. People here have to put a protective barrier in the foundations of their houses to stop it leaking through. But again, if a mine is allowed to go ahead that's 900 meters deep, there will be radon gas released, and that will cause radioactive contaminants to be in the air, and obviously they're carcinogenic. Again, with these heavy metals and the radon gas, etc., going about in the air. That's a threat to aquatic life. Now, I see I missed about the diesel fumes. Dalradian in their planning application say they will use 3.3 million litres of diesel per year on site for 20 years. Now at a time when our governments are telling us we should be doing away with diesel and diesel vehicles, they're going to just use 3.3 million litres every year on site. And again, we know that it's not good for your health. All the carbon dioxide and the nitrous oxides and all the emissions that come from diesel. I mentioned that on the right is a picture of one of our rivers, the Onkillue River, and it's designated as a special area of conservation because of the presence of freshwater pearl mussels. And freshwater pearl mussels are Ireland's only globally endangered species, so they're very special little creatures. The river is also designated thus because of salmon spawning and brown trout and otters. Now, the heavy metals and all will leak and leach into the water table, into the rivers, into the streams. It will also be blown about, in the air, the dust, etc. So it's a big threat to the fish in the river. The impact on biodiversity, there's a lot of special flora and fauna in our area because there's a lot of areas of special scientific interest. There's raised bog, the largest raised bog in Europe called the black bog. There's sessile oak trees here, and there's a lot of special things that need protection. Dalradian also applied to abstract 500,000 gallons of water per day, every day of the year for 20 years from the surrounding peat or bogland around their site, because gold mining is water intensive, and this is where they intend to get their water supply from the bog. Now, we all know now that peatland is a carbon store, and it's really important to protect it. It's really a most effective carbon store. So that we're very concerned about that. And finally, they've also applied to remove 74 acres of peatland in order to build their infrastructure. The human impacts, I mentioned health impacts from all the heavy metals and the diesel fumes and the radon gas. They will be in the air for the people to breathe in, and that will cause cancers and respiratory diseases. Dalradian have caused huge divisions in our community, among neighbours, among families, because you have people for the mine and people against the mine. Now, the majority are against the mine, but some people have been bought off with financial incentives and promises of well-paid jobs. Another strategy that Dalradian have started to use, and that we've found out it's used by gold mining companies throughout the world, is criminalisation of protectors. And that's where we call ourselves protectors or defenders. We want it to be positive. And that's where we are charged with petty offences and taken to court. For example, blocking the road, aggravated trespass, resisting arrest. If you ask, why am I being arrested? That's resisting arrest. So, and then when people are taken to court, the case isn't heard then, it's put off a month in and month out. There's one man that's been up 20 times for chaining himself to Dalradian's gates. He's actually been up 20 times and is put off every month. And I think the next time now is May or June. So anyhow, death threats, three of our people have received death threats, which the police described as credible. One of them is my husband here. That's why I'm keeping him sitting beside me. And murder bids, that's where a number of protectors have been driven at with vehicles, driven by employees and supporters of Dalradian and knocked down and sent across bonnets. There have been physical assaults where people have been hit and punched and knocked to the ground by employees and supporters of Dalradian. One man had his phone stamped on and broken. Threatening phone calls. Again, my husband here, he received one which I was able actually to record, which was about, putting our children in body bags. And also sex calls. The men seem to get a lot of the sex calls. And then the women, a lot of them are followed at night by suspicious cars. And finally, cyberbullying, which is probably the least, of our worries. That would be an ongoing thing where we're just called names and they take photos of us if they see us out, and just on the right, that was at a protest at the police station where we make reports about all the things that are happening to us, and the police tell us there are no crimes. So that's just myself holding a poster there saying death threats, murder bids, assault, cyberbullying, no crimes. Now, the next 3 slides, I'll quickly go through. They're really about greenwashing. And in fact, I actually looked up what greenwashing is. I just wanted to get it here because I couldn't believe it's greenwashing in the Cambridge English Dictionary is behavior or activities that make people believe that a company is doing more to protect the environment than it really is. So Dalradian have 2 PR companies, and they actually have been working flat out, putting advertisements, full page advertisements in our local papers for over the last 5 years. But this is one of them, a clear commitment to clean water. So on the other hand, I put alongside that their discharge consent application where they've applied to put 24 heavy metals into the river. So that's the clean water. Then the next one, building a safe and environmentally responsible mine. So the dry stack facility that I mentioned is going to be 17 stories high, 54 meters, 17 stories. And in their planning application, they say they have to keep it wet to stop the dust blowing about in the air because it'll contain all these chemicals and heavy metals. But in another part of their planning application, they say they have to keep it dry to stop acid mine drainage and to stop it slipping down the mountain. So I just included there a photo of a real dry stack facility from Arizona. And it says that it's ideally suited to a dry, arid climate, the same as we have here in the Sperrins. But I'm only joking there. We don't have that. We have heavy rain and strong winds, so not suited here. And this last ad, I'll skip over, just except for the title, committed to environmental responsibility. And really, again, they're proposing to buy carbon credits to offset their damage, and they've got themselves branded as carbon neutral. So then just some pictures of our protests and pickets and that, just to give you an idea of the crack we have. And then some direct action. And then on the left, where it actually I saw his name coming up there, that he's listening in. But we, in May 2019, we actually, because our local established politicians were bought off by Dalradian and were supporting them, none of them would come out and speak against them. So we stood an anti-gold mining candidate as an independent councillor, and he was elected. So he was the first elected in our area, and we were absolutely delighted. Top left. Bottom left, we made a complaint to the United Nations in March 2022. They were doing a review of the United Kingdom's human rights record. So we sent in, details of all the human rights violations as a result of the proposed gold mine. On the top right, it says in November 2022, there were 44,631 objections on the planning portal against Dalradian's planning application. Now, then they closed the planning portal and they have started a new one, and it's very difficult to get in, and we can't see now how many objections there are. And the bottom right, just the up-to-date situation is that Dalradian has still not got planning permission. The government has announced there will be a public inquiry, and no dates have been set yet, but we need now to get experts and to do fundraising if we have to pay the experts, and that's our focus now. And I think I'm on now to the last slide, if I can get it. Okay, so on the top left is a photo taken at the protest camp that's ongoing since February 2018, and there's a number of caravans on the proposed site set up by the local community, and it's called Greencastle People's Office, and they have a blog, and it's written every night. And there's a photo. Ireland says no to mining, and that's a strong message we want to give out. Our contact details are on the right hand side: email, Twitter and Facebook, Save Our Sperrins. And the bottom photo was in the early days when Dalradian came, and one of our defenders was going over with a banner, "No toxic gold mining in the Sperrins, Dalradian out." And it reminded us of a saying of John F. Kennedy that we decided to adopt as our motto: one person can make a difference and everyone should try. Okay, thank you.